Welcome everybody to the last session before the last keynote. I'm glad you're all still here. I'm Alex Mandel. I'm a geospatial engineer at Development Seed. And today I'm going to give you no answers.
Okay.
I'm going to lob a bunch of complaints about things to you. If you saw the last talk about scraping APIs, hopefully we can avoid that kind of stuff. But really this is a discussion about like what's going well and what's not going well in the world of exchanging data. How many people in the room produce data? Okay. How many people in the room actually serve that data to other people? And how many people in the room consume data? All right, good. So it's a nice mix. There's something for everybody in here. I don't know on this shot what is the API and what isn't. You could be traveling down the bridge. You could be traveling down the river. You want data in some way because we're all trying to get stuff done, right? And hopefully those data producers that are sharing data are trying to get the data into other people's hands, right? So we just want to sort of think about how are we actually going to do that and are we accomplishing that mission? All right, some brief history. This is a picture I scrounged up of Landsat 1. I think that's probably what most people would say is the thing that triggered all of this, right? The Landsat program, the first program that eventually released free and open data, and there's tons of it. This picture was kind of cool. I think, yeah. Random cases from a ground station in Pakistan that got shipped to the US so they could be recovered when they decided, oh, hey, look, why don't we actually collect all of that early Landsat data and put it all into one archive? And it highlights the early way we traded data. Many of you may not remember this, but in the old days, it was SneakerNet. It was always SneakerNet. You had to take some physical device somewhere to get somebody to copy files for you so you could take it back and actually do your work. And then we did a lot of work as a community. There's all sorts of new standards, metadata standards, service standards, search APIs. That was a big deal. You know, originally people would just put up a directory of either FTP directory or a web directory, you know, a giant list of files, go figure it out what the names are or the structure is and get the stuff you need. And somebody realized that's not going to scale. And then new things came along. Got rid of dial-up internet. Anybody know? Yeah. At least for most people. If you're thinking about who you're trying to distribute data to, there are still places in the world that have dial-up equivalent speeds or power outages or infrequent access. If those are the people you care about getting data to, you should think about how you're actually going to get the data to those people. And then, of course, now we've got cloud storage, so now we don't have to have the big problem that USGS had, which is where do we store all of these disks? I don't actually know what the answer is. Maybe I should ask someone I know who worked at Aeros, like, is there a giant warehouse where all these things live? Probably. So now we've got the cloud, and we've got lots of APIs, and I'm very excited. For those who don't know Stack, I'm pretty involved in Stack, Spatial Temporal Asset Catalogs. That is a great way to expose your data in an API to help people find it. And there's lots of them now. And then we also have these new things called cloud-native geospatial formats. The key thing, if you don't know what those are, is it's a format someone can put on the web that allows you to not have to download entire files if you just need a part of it. And when you can do that, then you can start playing with these data cubes. Some of you have probably seen some other talks last couple days about data cubes, which is like stacking tons and tons and tons of dimensions of data, all the things you can think of that you want to put together, and doing analysis on it without downloading anything. But we have a bit of an issue. This graph here is showing, it's from NASA, and it's showing the growth of volume in NASA data The end of this graph is next year. That blue line is the increase of total data. The orange line is how much data they're adding per year. And they're going to launch some new satellites next year. They're going to make this thing go exponential. Yeah, questions, right? How are you actually going to get that stuff to people? And so I'm going to talk a little bit now about what are the current issues and what it feels like some days when you're trying to get data from somewhere, right? So sometimes people put up catalogs or open data, but they don't put up a search API. They put up a static file. Has anybody ever downloaded the Landsat CSV that updates daily with all of the scenes that are coming in from Landsat? Yeah. So there's a file that just keeps getting bigger. I don't even know how big it is now. I haven't used it in like 5 years because they now have a stack API. You don't need the CSV anymore. It was great because you could find every Landsat scene that was available and the URL it was available at, but you had to download an ever-growing CSV every day. It wasn't just the changes. It was the complete collection as a CSV. And then sometimes people make search tools and they collect all this great data about other people's data, but they don't actually tell you where it is, just that it exists. And then you're like, how do I get it? Nobody knows. And maybe if you do know where it is, the question is, can you get an account? Can you get permissions within that account? Do you know the right place to sign up? I'm trying my best here to avoid, in my anecdotes, naming anybody specific for these atrocities. These are all real things I've hit in the last month. And I have a slide actually about that. And then hard to use formats. Anybody ever gone and tried to download a file and then be like, what is this? For those of you, HDF4 was the format du jour last month of how do I even get the stuff out of this? There was a crazy file we got. It came with rotated pole coordinates. The tools we were trying to open it with did not read the projection information, although it was there. So we had to read projection information with one tool, open the data with another tool, apply the projection information from the first one to the second one, only to realize that the file contained coordinates in 2 different ways. One was the rotated poles coordinate, and that's what it read in by default. There was another column of data that was X, Y in lat long. So we had to pull those out, put them into their own array, tell it that it was projected, and assign it back to the original so that we could actually use the data. Because if you tried to just reproject from its undefined proj CRS, it didn't work. Don't do that if you're producing data, please. And then, yes, the fun one. Lots of APIs think, hey, I know how to give this data to people. I'm going to give it to them in this way. Some 100-level nested hierarchy JSON that is custom to that website. Don't do that. There are better ways to do it. There are community standards for it. There's OGC standards for it. If you can use a standard that's out there that other people are already doing, please choose that so that we don't have to write a new tool on the client side. All right, so what's still missing? I'm sure some of you have ideas here about like painful processes you've gone through. For me, I feel like the big thing is talking about the clients. I'm skipping ahead a little bit in my ideas here, but we'll get back to this. It feels like a maze, and there's no one way. There's probably a whole bunch of other ways I haven't even drawn on this page. I don't have Windows, that's not mine. So there's probably a whole bunch of other ways I didn't draw on this page that I don't know about that are totally valid. And that's okay. There are many ways to get to the same answer, which is I want the data. Everybody wants it to be like the top. Unfortunately, it's like the bottom. Yeah, this one's worthwhile going over a little bit. Because the first thing you do is you go to the internet and you're like, I want to do an analysis, and you have some sentence, right? What data do I actually need? And then you spend the next, I don't know, weeks, months, diving through, trying to figure out what data actually exists for the place I want to research that covers the things I want to do, and is it in a format or a scale that actually works? And a lot of times the answer still is no, or, hey, wait, I found this cool thing. I think it is what I want. And you're like, nope, that wasn't it. Oh, wait, there's this other one. Nope, that wasn't it. And this happens every single time. Even something as simple as a digital elevation model. You would think that would be the simplest thing. It's one band, it's just the height above the earth. There are so many options, so many APIs, all claiming to have the same thing, but they're not all the same. It's very confusing. All right, so then you get past that, right? You finally found the one thing you need from the service you need. How do you get it? If you're lucky, you find the docs and you read about how to use the API. If you're not lucky, you find some website that uses it and how they do it, and you read their source code page, and you're like, oh, that's how I get it. Or you stumble across something on Stack Exchange, Reddit, your favorite tech place to find how to do this, right? Hopefully you find docs, otherwise internet searching. Great. You finally figured out the API, or an example that shows you how to use it. So you go to the catalog. Can you use the catalog without auth? Sometimes. A lot of times, private providers, nope, you gotta get an account first. And you're like, but I'm just seeing if you have data. Do I really need to log in to find out if you have data? That seems a little strange. Okay, so you get into the catalog, you do a search. Did you actually get what you thought you were gonna get? Did you search the right catalog? I'll give you some stories about searching one catalog to realize I wasn't searching the right catalog. This group has 4 catalogs. I better go check the other ones. Are they the same API? No. Let's assume you figured that out. I'm searching the right one. I got results. I want to see those results before I try to pull data. Does it have a preview part of its API? Not usually. Okay, so then let's say it does. You get a preview. You're like, great, that looks great. Let's grab some of that data. Now you have a huge list of questions that you need to ask. This is not the full list of questions. I'm sure you all have more questions than this. But I realized I just started writing them down, and I'm like, oh, wait, that question too, and that question, and that question, and that question. Can I answer these with just the results from the API, not actually the data? Sometimes yes. Oftentimes, no, I have to download a sample. Are they going to charge me for that? Is that going to count against my quota? Am I going to get blocked if I download too much data? All valid concerns, right? Okay, so important things. Do they actually have the results for the time and place I'm looking for them? Yes. Great. Is the file too big to download? I don't know. Does the API tell me how big the file is? No. If I'm in the cloud, am I working in the same region where the data is? So far, we've only talked about getting one type of data, right? Okay, now imagine a real scenario where the whole point of the analysis is you have 2 things. One thing is in Western Europe. One thing is in US West 2. Great. Where do I do my compute? I have to decide, right? Which one will let me egress? Which one's gonna charge me for that? Am I paying for it? Are they paying for it? Okay, now, we solved that. What library do I use to open those files? I'm sure you all have a large number of choices, right? Depends on programming language. Are you opening it directly from the web? Are you opening it from a bucket? Are you downloading it? We're trying to get to the point where we don't have to do that part. And then if I do use it directly from the bucket, do I have the permissions? Do I have the right arguments to the API? I don't know. Is it documented? So now you see, I've gone in a full loop. I'm back to the documentation, right? And then all along the way, depending on the API, you might have to authenticate. If you're doing this in code, the fun part becomes, how do you authenticate? And does the tool I'm using to read the data handle authentication? I think you can see, like, I'm full of problems, right? Here's a list of a few R problems. Spatial formats, GDAL is awesome. If you're not using that, you should be using that. When I say GDAL, I mean GDAL and OGR, so vector and raster. It can handle S3. You just got to remember sometimes you have to replace S3 with VSI S3. If it's something that isn't spatial, good luck, I don't really cover that. I was helping some people recently, and we were like, we're working in R. Great, I know Python. Python's great. The Boto 3 library is great for Python for doing stuff with AWS. In R, well, there's an S3 package. There's an AWS.S3 package. The one thing we didn't find when searching for that was, it turns out there's this package called PAWS, P-A-W-S. That's the actual one that works and is supported and has maintainers and is officially on AWS's blog somewhere. It's not the one you get if you search Google for how do I access a file with S3 in R. And then give some other examples. If you're trying to do stuff with NASA, there's an Earth data login package. Use it. It's great. If it doesn't work for you, make some comments. The maintainer is awesome, and they will respond because they use it daily too. If you're using Stack, there is a client. Use it. Anytime you can use a client that already exists for the type of API you're trying to use, do it. Don't write your own requests. Don't hack curl into everything. I used to do that because there wasn't RStack, and it makes life so much easier. There's not really a lot in the Python world that's different. It's the same deal. Sometimes you need the S3, sometimes you need the HTTPS, sometimes you need to actually put in VSI S3 because the particular library needs it that way. Yes, I did see a user injecting a netrc file into their Python code and then making a system call out to wget recently. There's no need for that anymore. But I understand why they did it. They did it because downloading with Python, in R, there's a function called download. In Python, you open some connection to a URL, you have to pull bytes. The bytes are an object in memory, and then how do you save that? Right? It's just not obvious to end users how you do something like that. Yes, my favorite one. 3 APIs to the same data sets, or so it seems, because they're all from the same org, they're all documented on the same docs. Turns out the data I needed is only in one of them, and it was not the Stack API. In fact, it was an API I had never seen before, because it's not common in the geospatial world at all. Yeah, Chuck, you're gonna remember this one. The auth worked, I got that part to work, and then every time I tried to download something, permission denied. So now I was told I need to file a help desk ticket. Let's see, other fun things. This is a common issue in Stack, and everybody in Stack is aware of this, that not all properties in a Stack record, because you've got lots of nested JSON properties that people can put in there, they're not all searchable in the API, and that's just the reality of the way it is right now. So you have to pull the results, and then you have to run a query, essentially a filter, over those results to actually get what you want. We are trying to work on it in the Stack community to make it better, trying to make more things at more nested depth searchable. But until then, it's up to users to be like, make your request, get the GeoJSON back, turn the GeoJSON into a GeoPandas data frame, and then use whatever you use on a data frame to filter columns. Let's see, things I can tell you to do in Python. Use the Earth Access library for doing things with NASA. Makes life much easier. Maintainers are reachable. You used to have to write your own CMR clients. Thankfully, no longer, because there are so many of them out there that are no longer maintained. You can get very lost with that. So I'm telling you now, just skip anything that says CMR in it, go straight to the Earth Access one, and it uses the right stuff you need. Same story as R, there is a stack client. Use it. No reason to do hand things with requests anymore. Occasionally, if you're not using stack, most people these days say HTTPX. That's easier to use than requests. And then the great part is spatial libraries, they know how to handle a lot of this stuff for you. And there's more and more examples out there of how to do it. You're still going to hit auth problems, but at least there are other people struggling through those too. All right, yeah, so this is everything in the last month that I've hit a problem with in using someone's API. Do I need to read this? I'll take requests. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about on these. Yeah, there's all sorts of fun stuff in here, like even if you're using GDAL-based stuff, there are some environment variables you want to set to make your experience better. I just happen to show an example from R here. You can do a similar thing for Python. And it really depends on the type of files you're reading. So like, you really have to know a lot about this stuff to know to do these things. I don't think most users would ever know this, but if they find it in a reliable looking post online, they'll try it for better or worse. Yeah, I think the one that frustrates me the most, though, is the auth schemes. Because you never know when the tool you're using, especially these common ones like GDAL, OGR, handle these auth schemes or not. And I've been very lucky to find that this month I was looking through those things and I was like, oh, yes, a non-AWS S3. That is a URL to some other thing besides Amazon that has an S3 API on it. They do exist. And when they do exist, luckily, Rasterio supports it. And I was very glad after a quick search, it was like, oh yeah, we implemented that. And it's just one little additional argument you have to pass. All right, so this is the discussion part. I feel like we're not paying enough attention to who are we actually trying to give this data to and who needs the data. I've broken it down this way. I think there are other ways we could break it down. APIs are great. App developers and web developers tend to know how to deal with APIs. Everybody else is like, what is that? I've never opened the developer tools in my browser to try and figure out what it's doing. Why would I need to do that? I'm a scientist or a decision maker or somebody who doesn't do development. I think that's where we're starting to fall apart. I'm curious to hear what other people think in the room. And yeah, the picture is how I feel sometimes with this stuff. So I'm going to open it up now. Who's got complaints? It's time to share.
I don't believe this stop blind words. The same argument I just put 10 years ago to see that accountability. Sounds like you're just writing a user or stuff.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a new problem at all.
But we stopped drugs.
Did we? Yeah, I mean, I'll be clear. I think these are very solvable. The point of my talk is really to focus this community on what's left to do on these great libraries we have to make the user experience good, right? It's like little things on the edges of we need to get the auth stuff wrapped in better, right? I know Henry here, I've been bugging him for a few weeks to work on this tool to search across multiple catalogs and redirect you to the correct catalog so that you don't have to guess where it is or do a Google search to find the right one. More ideas? Complaints? Air it all out. I'll give you the mic if you want. Everybody's on board. Anybody got a solid idea of what they're going to try next week?
And we have like this new SDKs that are meant to deal with this type of systems, but we essentially scientists that know it, guys, that deserve data scientists use some UX. So we have Python, we have data service. And somebody has done Java certain UI for this usability, it's not us. But we might bring the fix it and just get a certain UI brain.
That's all internal though, right? In-house?
My mind is just going to the AWS assume we're all a mess that I have to deal with.
Yeah, that's pretty fun too, right? Chuck has a fun hack about that actually, that he taught me, which was you can put a role in a config file in the environment, and you can pass that profile name to calls you're going to make with things like REST area, and it just does it. And it auto-renews, it doesn't expire, which was mind-blowing because normally when you do those assume role things, there's like a 1 hour expiration on it unless you have the thing set up to do longer, but I think it maxes at 8 hours, or is it 24? I don't know. But yeah, there's fun hacks like that.
I'm certain that's all I have in stack. No, I don't just use those knowing. Yeah.
That's a word.
Outside.
Great question. The question was, how do we organize these hacks? So where do we put them that everybody can find them? I don't have the answer right now. Anybody got a suggestion?
Something in the source certificate easy to find with that.
Anybody got a favorite place they go? I mean, for me, it used to be Stack Exchange, especially the GIS Stack Exchange, right? Because you could upvote the right answer. These days, there's lots of like just samples of code floating around, and I'm guilty of this too, like a random gist, public gist on GitHub, and you're like, is this the right answer? I don't know. Actually, with the Earth Data login, I was trying some stuff, and I threw it together, and I figured out how to make it work, and I made it work with Earth Data login tokens, and then I pinged the developer of that package, and he's like, oh no, don't do it that way anymore. I'm like, but this was based on a gist you made. And he's like, yeah, go see my package now. I'm like, I didn't even know about that package. So yeah, I think you've identified a huge problem of like, we're decentralized. I don't think we're ever going to centralize. But there could be a better way to share stuff. Yeah? Anybody want to rant about their favorite problem? We got like 2 minutes. You can call out people on this. I was just being nice. Someone must have a favorite API that they have struggled with.
There's a certain funding source that's an interesting set of APIs that as a one of bonds.
I've been doing a couple of these things when they first come out using the Bootstrap. And I see that way way didn't against the whole address today system. And they asked me like very very not going with like system and software with us. So now we are Facebook, the fact the board that way it gets into usable sign in days
subsection would be, and that's down on that always does.
For those who didn't catch that, CSW has some limitations in the size and complexity of queries, and this person is working on solutions for that. Hopefully, maybe you can talk to the CSW spec people about in the future expanding capacity, like something in the spec that might help.
Use that.